Well, Schlock equals MC squared. Chris, do you know what that is?
Schlock. Imka Schlock, yeah.
Yeah, that is the theory of Schlockativity that we are going to be talking about today with the movie Young Einstein. We are in one of our favorite places to get together and hang out. We actually had the ability to come together and be in person, so this is a little bit different. We are recording outside. You can probably hear all of the ambiance of the city, the small city.
Coming to you straight from an alleyway.
This might be a bit of a short one, but Chris, Yahoo Serious.
Yeah.
He's the guy who is behind this movie, and I think he needs some help. I was looking some things up, and the last entry in Wikipedia for him was that he got evicted during COVID because he owed like $15,000. So I don't think Young Einstein brought in a lot of money.
What's interesting, I assumed he had done a lot more films, but looking him up,
Thrice the films.
And that's from 88 to 2000, so in a 12-year period.
Yeah, a huge gap there. So he did Young Einstein's first film.
And then Reckless Kelly.
Then Reckless Kelly, which I love. And then that was in 93.
And then
7 years later.
Mr. Accident?
Mr. Accident.
Which, that's the only one of his three I had not seen.
Yeah, I haven't seen it. I've seen just like bits and pieces of it.
I've seen the trailer, and I'm not opposed to watching it. But
oh, I'd love to watch it. I assumed it like came out a long time ago, but I didn't realize it was just 2000, which I guess is a long time ago now.
You know, and I thought he might have some cameos in some other Australian movies, but there's really nothing, which is interesting.
Yeah, he's funny. So
yeah. So this was my choice of a movie.
It is, yeah.
And so you, in our kind of new format, get to talk about the good and the bad. And then we'll get into the whole schlock of it.
So, all right, I'll do this. Good. It's a funny movie. I like Yahoo Serious. I think he's got a charming sense of humor. It's really kind of a throwback to. Well, I guess it's not a throwback because it was happening at that time, but kind of that slapstick comedy, and that's something that is really refreshing to see, and I had a good time with that. I think it's interesting going that direction. I think the concept of young Einstein inventing rock and roll and doing like all these
surfing
things. And surfing, yeah, he invented surfing. Like I think that's really cool. That's a really fun idea. I don't know about I'll go into the bad. I don't know about the whole him being from Australia thing. I like that's a little confusing for my pea brain. He's German, right?
Not in this alternate universe.
Yeah, so
in this version he's Australian. He's from Tasmania. He's Tasmanian.
Barbarian Tasmanian. So the main thing I didn't like about it was that I felt like it moved a little slow. It felt like a series of skits that were kind of strung together, and it's a little absurd, but I mean that's probably what it's supposed to be, right? It is supposed to be absurd. He's splitting a beer atom, and that's how he comes up with the theory of relativity. I guess that's how that works.
That's how that works. You
think that's really funny? What do you have in good and bad?
You know. The whole thing is good to me. It's just fun. Yahoo Serious is a very watchable. I do like the slapstick and the physical comedy. Bad. If it's not your cup of tea, it's not your cup of tea. That's really the only bad I have. Like, I think that he succeeded in what he was trying to do, and he put on screen what he wanted. And it's probably not for everyone, but it's definitely for me. So I loved it, but I could totally see someone just not getting this at all and be like, "What this? Why?" And there's no explaining why. If you have to ask why, then it's not for you, and that's fine.
That's fair. I think one of the problems with it is that it was originally supposed to be a different movie. It was supposed to be called The Great Goober or Great...
Yeah, and that was about a guy who invented rock and roll and surfing.
Right, yeah, and so he saw something about Einstein.
So
and
he Frankensteined Einstein onto the previous character.
Yeah, and that actually makes a lot of sense. Why maybe there's some structural things in there. Why it seems a little stitched together, in a way, because we're really watching kind of two different movies, right? This guy who is inventing relativity, but also a guy who's inventing rock and roll and things like that.
My point, we'll kind of get into the schlock, but what's really interesting about that...
5 minutes in, this is like the earliest
we've ever gotten
into Schlock.
Well, we really didn't do like the kind of box office stuff or the web of Schlock. We're kind of just diving into it.
We dived right into... So, well, I can do a box office real quick.
Yeah, here we go.
I hear that's hot these days. So it costs originally, I think, about $2 million. Very low budget. He had to like sell his car to get it made, and then eventually, with advertising and whatnot, and some studio backing, it went up to about $8 million.
There was a reshoot involved because he wasn't happy with the original
cut because it's a different movie.
Well,
they had a different movie going.
The thing that's really cool though is the original idea of the movie is this tall tale about this. That's what the whole thing is a tall tale, which is a very feels a very like early American type vibe thing, like a Paul Bunyan or like just this larger than life type character. And what's really fun is you have a character who's clearly not invented all these things, but we're purporting that he did invent them, right?
He may have.
And so what's cool is to take a historical character who everyone has assumptions about and just go on a completely nonsensical tangent of like, oh, and he also invented rock and roll, and he also invented surfing. Oh, and he's actually Australian. Oh, and he split the atom to make bubbles in beer. Oh, and he was romantically involved with Mary Curry, and he got to hang out with Darwin. And yeah, it just keeps going there and going there and going there. And I really like the idea of taking a historical figure and turning him into a tall tale. That's really that's interesting to me.
From Australia.
Tasmania.
So, correct me if I'm wrong. I don't know. Maybe you out there know, and you can tell us in the comments. Beer. Doesn't beer go through like a natural like carbonization process? So it already has bubbles.
Yeah. Yeah, it's just super silly. This is some silly stuff.
So, have you ever seen Reckless Kelly? It's kind of the same thing that you were just talking about, right? Reckless Kelly is sort of a folk hero. Australian folk hero.
Yep.
And they make a tall tale that's larger than life. I actually love Reckless Kelly. I think that's a hilarious movie. I think all the comedy hits a little bit better. But so maybe Mr. Accident is about some other folk hero?
Could be. I'm not really familiar. So you're talking about how it feels like sometimes two different movies and how sometimes it feels stitched together with one skit leading into another skit. And you're not wrong. Like his surfing thing is just one shot, right? I mean, he builds a surfboard, then he goes surfing, and there's the fun dating montage. But you could cut that out of the movie, and the movie would not change at all. So that is a fair complaint. But the thing that holds it together and makes it more of a movie for me is my greatest good in this film, and that is the soundtrack. I utterly love the soundtrack, and I'm probably like a broken record on this show because I think it's about every other.
You just love the soundtrack, man.
Every other movie, I'm like, yours are my good. It's the soundtrack, but this seriously is one of my favorite soundtracks. I purchased a CD of it a couple years back because you couldn't find it anywhere. Oh yeah, like, this is it. I think what brought me into this movie and sold it for me and like get me completely on board is when he leaves Tasmania to go to the mainland Australia, and it's the walking montage to it's a rock band from Australia called Icehouse, and the song is Great Southern Land, and this is just one of the best songs ever written. Like, it is just so good.
Well, it seemed, that portion seemed like a music video for that song.
As well it should be.
Like they could just cut it out and put it on 80s MTV.
I liked, it, mainly in the 80s, probably before, and a little bit in the 90s, the montage from Act 1 into Act 2 of them going on the adventure and having the fun rock song that takes you there. something about it. There's some nostalgia, but it sucks you into the movie. Like you're like, okay, I'm down. I'm on this ride.
Mm-hmm.
So I think the music at the end is super silly and fun, and it also is the intro song, the rock and roll. Just fun. The music just really works on all levels. The classical pieces they choose to include. The same one from 2001: Space Odyssey.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. So, just fun. Yeah.
Well, so here's a question for you. This came out in 1988, I believe. I'm not sure when these other movies came out, but it was kind of a popular genre at the time. Weird Science, Revenge of the Nerds, Real Genius. This kind of nerd glorification culture. I don't know. American Splendor, I think that's what it's called. Have you ever seen that? It's like about a comic book. It's Paul Giovanni in it. Yep. He's got a buddy. He's like super into that nerd culture. Like that was like apparently a thing. Then is this movie? Is it supposed to be kind of a part of that genre? Do you think?
You know, it fits into that genre, but I don't think it's actually part of that genre. I think Yahoo is a singular artist who just has a vision that is
unmatched,
nerdy,
unparalleled.
You know, the other thing that this falls into that was really popular at this time was the kind of Australian wave that was coming over here with Crocodile Dundee.
The Dundies?
Yeah.
Is that it?
Well, and then you had like
there's two movies from Australia,
but it's not just the movies.
Crocodile Dundee 1 and 2.
The band Men at Work.
AC/DC. Oh,
yeah.
What did they do?
The Down Under.
Sing it.
Yeah, that one. Yeah. So it hits two of your main things. It hits your nerd culture, popular movies there. And it hits the Australian wave, so I'm surprised it didn't do better over here.
Well, I guess it did really well in Australia. Like the Australites loved it. Is that what you call them? It's like it was like number 5 top grossing movie or something like that in the criminal island of Australia, but it did not do so hot.
With landowners in Asia.
Yeah. Landowners in Asia. Yeah, here, people thought, I think they thought it was just going to be a different type of movie, maybe because of the whole weird science thing.
It's just, you don't see movies like this being made anymore.
No good slapsticks anymore.
The slapstick, the fact that it's a period piece, the fact that it's like...
Well, yeah, so a period piece on kind of like a $2 to $8 million budget, like a pretty low budget film.
It looks really good for like directorial debut and like some shot composition.
True. I'll give it that.
Some really cool shots. I really liked their use of Australia in it. Like... You have little joeys everywhere with the little kangaroos he's petting. You have a koala. You just have really cool wildlife that it's like you're using the locations that you have to the degree that you have. You have the beaches, you have the ocean, you have the forests.
Well, it makes sense why it would be popular to Australians because it does sort of highlight their neck of the woods, right? Like it does show like all of the great exotic things about Australia.
We didn't get into it. It's just kind of this is an episode that's all over.
Yeah, you'll see. We don't have like any script or anything. So
yeah, this is us without our little sheets of paper.
Yeah, everywhere.
Preston. He was the people eater in Mad Max Fury Road.
Oh, for real?
Yeah.
So wow, we got some
Schlock.
big talent in there.
But you know, it's again Australian cinema.
Yeah, there can't be like too many Australian actors, right?
There are a couple.
It's not
There's a couple.
How big is Australia? I've only seen it on a map, and I know the map is all messed up. Is it the size of the United States?
You know, I don't know.
I
It's
think it's
bigger
really
than
small.
it's bigger than you think.
I think it's small, but you can't walk across it. It's impossible.
It's a riddle.
What I've heard.
What is small but you can't walk across it?
Australia. Yeah.
This is just going off the rails, people. If this were a call-in show, I'd be taking a call right now.
Yeah, maybe we could find one of these people walking around and ask them what they think of young Einstein.
So,
and they'd be like,
had you seen it before?
I had. So I originally thought Mr. Accident was young Einstein because I did see some pieces of it, and I thought he like tinkered around and was like inventing things or something. And so I'm like, oh yeah, young Einstein. I've sort of seen this before, and then I watched it a few years ago. It's probably been like 10 years ago now, and I was like, this is not the movie I thought it was. This is like so totally different. But yeah, I had seen it before. I think I had kind of the same opinion of it then as I do now. Sitting back and looking at it as a whole, I think it's much more charming. Like it, in my mind, if you can take out like all of the dead time in it and maybe the musical numbers, and then like get to the jokes like the kittens being baked in the pie, like all the super quirky stuff in it, and you like condense it in my memory. Yeah. Then I'm like, oh yeah, I love this movie.
It feels like Yahoo Serious was like again back to that singular genius of art, where you look at like Stanley Kubrick or like Spike Lee.
He is definitely a Spike Lee, the Australian Spike Lee for sure.
It's so idiosyncratic. There's such a singular vision in this of the humor and just the oddness of it, right? Mm-hmm. That you don't see with films made by committee. That it's endearing. But I would defend this movie forever, probably because I have such a nostalgia for it from seeing it in my youth so many times.
Mm-hmm. So, how did you see it in your youth?
TV.
It was on TV?
It was on TV. Yeah.
Which TV? The channel?
I do not know. It might have been one of my uncles renting it.
Okay.
I don't know how I saw it. All I know is I saw it once. I loved it. And then every chance I got, I would watch it again.
Okay. That's fair. I'm just going to keep referring to Reckless Kelly because that's like that was a big
that's
movie
what you wish we were reviewing.
That's what I wish we were reviewing. I think we recorded it off of HBO. So I had like a VHS of it that I watched all the time. Yeah, I don't know, man. I don't have...
You brought up something where you're talking about thinking about the movie as a whole, kind of retrospectively, as opposed to actually being in the moment and watching it, and how you like it more when you're thinking about it, as opposed to when you're actually sitting there watching it, because there's connective issues and downtime. That's interesting. Like, there's a movie that's made to be enjoyed as you're watching it, and then there's a movie that you like
they're made to not enjoy,
to that you end up enjoying more because the parts are greater than the whole. So when you think about it retrospectively, all those parts loom so large that you have really fond memories, but then when you go to watch it, you're like, well, all those things hit the proper triggers in me. They make me happy, but there's all this other stuff in there that is making it not the same experience.
Well, as you're speaking, and you said that as a kid you watched it over and over again, I can't help but wonder. This is something that kind of kept popping into my mind while watching it. Monty Python. It's very different from Monty Python humor, but there's some things in it that I'm like, oh, this feels. I mean, it's within the same genre, right? The slapstick time period, timepiece. What am I trying to say? Time period piece.
You're saying what you're saying.
I'm saying what I'm saying. Monty Python. They are a group of movies, a group of actors that I think, other than
They're a group of movies.
They are a thing that exists in the world. So minus the Holy Grail. The Holy Grail I watched and immediately loved it, and I think that's because I watched it with people that loved it. Every other movie of theirs, the first time I watched them, and maybe even the second time, I'm just like, it's all right. But then the more I watch them, that's the brilliant thing about Monty Python, is that they're extremely rewatchable, and the more you watch them, the funnier they get, because you're in on the joke more. And so perhaps that's why I've only seen it twice. You've seen it a number of times, and you can reference the jokes. You know that it's coming.
You know, that really, we were talking about Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3 the other day, because we both went to see it separately, and like, oh, let's talk about it. And the thing that I remember that we brought up is that, you know, the stuff that's taking place during the current part is very, very humorous and slapsticky and over the top, and the most Guardians of the Galaxy, almost to a fault.
Right.
Like, but then the spoiler alert, the backstory with Rocket and where he came from is just extremely dark and sad and haunting, right?
Right.
And I was talking about how, like, I'd see a scene that's really funny, and I'm like, oh, that's funny, but I wouldn't be laughing like I would in one of the previous Guardian movies, because I'd still have the aftertaste of that really...
Still have, like, wet cheeks.
Yeah, that really sad
tortured.
scene of animal torture, and you're like, oh my gosh, this is so sad. And you're not ready for the scene of... So, with that in mind, you really don't need anything connecting those two scenes, because the bridge of emotion is going to connect them. So in something like Monty Python, where you've seen it multiple times, they could have the same kind of connective issues that this movie has, but because you're still riding the high of that emotional laughter of the previous skit, that it doesn't matter how they transition to the next one, because you're still going to be riding that emotional bridge that's going to connect you to it. So I wonder how, if you and I are just having completely different experiences watching this movie because of how many times I've seen it, or because the jokes land different with me, and you kind of wash over that
Right.
flaw. And that's really interesting. But I was thinking with the Guardians how an effective scene can take its emotions and they linger with you into the next scene or into the next couple scenes, and that affects how you feel about how you got to that scene.
And so you're saying that this movie doesn't do that unless you've seen it multiple times?
Well, I'm saying maybe it's not the movie, maybe it's me. Maybe it does. Maybe that's what's happening to me when I watch it, so I gloss over those faults more, and I'm more forgiving of them because I've seen it enough, and because it's so familiar, and those emotional cues hit where they should, and it's the same effect that you're having with Life of Brian, per se, where if I were to go see Life of Brian and I haven't seen it in 10 or 15 years, I might be like, yeah, it's really funny, but it feels kind of, skits and sketchy, and it's not really connected, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah, so that's a really interesting thing to think about, of like the emotional transition of from one bit of the movie to the next.
Right. Took a while. We got there.
Yeah.
Like I said, kind of a weird format for us. So we're probably going to, unless you have anything else that you want to get into.
If you haven't seen this movie, you should go see this movie.
As you say, it is a perfectly cromulent movie.
Yeah, it embiggens us all.
It has good bones.
Yep.
You have a young guy. He's smart. He's got to go into the big city from his humble beginnings, and he finds a girl, and he's got to save the day from some big disaster. It's all there. It's just how it gets connected.
Why didn't he hit? Is it too innocent of a style of comedy? Like, I'm thinking, like 5-6 years later, you have like Adam Sandler hit, who's extremely funny and amazing, but like any comedian, if they have the right vehicles, can become a star.
Well,
Was he too idiosyncratic, too different, too?
The reviews that I was reading said that it was just a little too immature in the humor, like not immature in that, like, fart jokes, right? They're always funny, but like immature in that it seems like it was for a younger audience. Whereas Billy Madison, like, really, obviously very funny for younger audiences, but like older audiences like thought it was funny as well. And I think that's what it was missing.
Okay.
In Young Einstein.
Okay.
It didn't have enough stuff for the older audiences, which is weird because it's like a bunch of science jokes.
Yeah, it's jokes of history jokes, science jokes, really.
But with the whole thing of him being from Australia and E=mc² comes from like trying to split a beer molecule, like that's stuff that maybe an adult would think about a little too much.
It's inherently silly.
Yeah.
And sometimes silliness doesn't translate into the adult world. Yeah. And maybe, again, it's just a different experience watching it now. But yeah, that's probably all we have for today's show.
Yeah. Since we're doing something really different and weird for our next movie, we're going to do something really different and weird. I want you to go to our Instagram. It's just instagram.com/compelledbyschlock. You can look it up. For our next movie, we're going to decide between either reviewing Children of the Corn, the original, or Children of the Corn, the 2023 remake. You get to go and vote and choose. We're going to be doing that within the next 24 hours, so get there as soon as you can. If you haven't and you're watching us now, please like this video, subscribe, share it with your friends. Come and hang out with us. As you can see, we're just some regular chill dudes that love movies.
Banana bubble teas.
Yeah.
With tapioca pearls.
So, all right, everybody. Until next time, I am Darby Ellis Lewis Wilson. This is Chris Anonymous. I'm getting some texts on my phone, so we will see you later. Peace.
Bye. Oh yeah, we're compelled by Schlock.
We're compelled by Schlock.
Yeah.
I am compelled.